All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are taking a seriously fascinating journey into the very architecture of life. We often look at the natural world around us and just see this incredible diversity. Trees, birds, flowers, animals, all seemingly completely different from one another. But today we're going to peel back the layers. We're exploring the overarching theme of biological organization and reproduction. And we're traveling from the visible macro world that we interact with every single day, all the way down to the hidden, microscopic processes that make life possible. It's a beautifully organized system, and I absolutely can't wait to unpack it with you. So to kick things off, I want you to consider this. What do a flowering mustard plant and a common frog actually have in common at the microscopic level? On the surface, the answer seems like a resounding absolutely nothing, right? I mean, one is rooted in the ground, soaking up the sun, and the other's hopping between land and water, hunting for insects. But as we take our zoom-in journey today, you're going to discover that despite their massive external differences, the internal blueprints they use to sustain their species are incredibly, almost shockingly similar. Okay, let's start right at the top layer, the macro level. Both the mustard plant and the frog are prime examples of multicellular organisms. This basically means their bodies aren't just a single, solitary cell trying to do everything at once. Instead, they're made up of vast numbers of cells that have organized themselves into very specific groups to perform specific tasks. And despite their completely different habitats and physical structures, both of these multicellular organisms share one fundamental biological goal that drives their entire existence, and that is the drive to reproduce and carry their genetic legacy forward. Let's dive right in with our first subject, Brassica campestris. The mustard plant, or as it's locally known in some regions, sarsoon. Now this is a beautifully complex multicellular plant that's typically cultivated during the winter season. To put it into perspective, if you were to stand next to a fully grown mustard plant, it would reach anywhere from 1 to 1.5 meters in length. It's a huge staple crop. It's known for its leaves, which are used as vegetables, and its seeds, which are highly valued for oil extraction. But beyond its agricultural uses, its biological structure is what we really want to focus on today. Now, what is really cool here is how brilliantly the mustard plant divides its labor. It essentially splits its body into two totally distinct functional parts. On one side, we have the vegetative parts. So that includes the root, the stem, and the leaves. These parts are solely dedicated to the day-to-day survival of the plant, drawing in water, nutrients, and sunlight. But on the other side, completely separate from those survival mechanisms, we have the reproductive part. In the mustard plant, this absolutely vital role is handled entirely by its distinctive yellowish flowers. These flowers have one job and one job only, to produce the seeds that will become the next generation. All right, shifting gears to the animal kingdom, let's look at Rana tigrina, the common spotted frog. Just like our mustard plant, the frog is a highly developed multicellular organism with complex multi-tissue organ systems. And just like the mustard plant has its flowers, the frog has a highly developed reproductive system entirely dedicated to its continuation. In males, this specialized system includes the testes and vasa efferentia. And females? Well, they rely on ovaries, an oviduct, and an ovisac to produce and transport eggs. These specific organs are vital for their continuation, and they work perfectly in sync to guarantee the survival of the species. So let's zoom in a bit, going from the macro level of entire organs down to the microscopic tissue level. The organs of these complex creatures, especially those reproductive systems we just discussed, they don't just float around aimlessly. They are lined and protected by highly specialized tissues. One of the most important types of tissue in this whole biological architecture is called epithelial tissue. You can think of epithelial tissues as the specialized linings or boundaries of the body's internal rooms and corridors. They shield exactly what needs to be protected while facilitating essential biological functions. To really understand how these organs function, we've got to break down the structural difference between the two main categories of these tissues. First up, we have simple epithelial tissue. This is defined, simply as an epithelium composed of a single, highly efficient layer of cells. It's thin, which is great for things like absorption and secretion. On the flip side, we have stratified epithelial tissue. This type contains 2 or more layers of cells. Because it's multi-layered, it's generally thicker and provides a much higher level of protection against wear and tear. Now here's the crucial point, how these specific tissues are uniquely tailored and strategically located to support reproduction. If we look closely at the reproductive systems, we find a very specific shape of these cells, columnar epithelia, which are tall, column-like cells. The source material tells us that simple columnar epithelia, that single layer of column-shaped cells, are prominently found in the female reproductive system. Meanwhile, stratified columnar epithelia, multiple layers, are actually pretty rare in the body overall. But guess where they show up? Predominantly in some organs of the reproductive system. Nature literally places exactly the right type of cellular lining exactly where it's needed to support the creation of new life. Which brings us to a pretty massive question in this explainer. We've seen the macroorganisms, right? We've zoomed in to see the specialized epithelial tissues lining their reproductive organs. But how do these systems actually produce the next generation? Like, what is the actual mechanism happening behind those protective cellular walls that allows a mustard plant to create a seed or a frog to create an egg? Well, to answer that, we have to zoom in one final time. Welcome to the microclimax of our journey, meiosis and germ cells. This is literally where the magic of continuation happens. Meiosis is a very specific, highly regulated type of cell division. It's known as a reduction division. And why is that? Well, because during this process, a single parent cell divides to form 4 daughter cells, but it does something incredible along the way. It cuts the number of chromosomes exactly in half. This halving is absolutely critical. If the chromosomes weren't reduced by half in the germ cells, the resulting offspring would end up with double the normal amount of DNA, and that would cause severe biological errors. Looking at this, you can visually track exactly what that reduction looks like. Notice how those X-shaped structures holding the genetic code pair up, align right in the center, and are systematically pulled apart to opposite poles of the dividing cell. It is a highly choreographed sequence of events, basically ensuring that each new daughter cell receives the precise, reduced payload of genetic material required. Now, meiosis actually happens in 2 main stages, but let's briefly look at the first half, meiosis I. Also known as the first meiotic division. This phase is vital because it's the specific stage where the crucial halving of the chromosomes actually occurs. It unfolds in 4 highly precise steps. We start with prophase I, where chromosomes become visible and pair up, move into metaphase I as they align right down the middle, hit anaphase I as they're actively pulled apart, and finally reach telophase I, where the cell physically begins to divide. The precision here has to be absolutely flawless. What's truly staggering to me is the brilliant adaptability of nature when applying this exact same microscopic process across totally different forms of life. In animals, like our common spotted frog, this identical 4-step reduction division takes place in specialized germ cells to produce gametes, specifically sperms and eggs. But over in plants, like our mustard plant, meiosis happens in what are called spore mother cells to produce spores. It is the exact same fundamental cellular machinery, aiming for the exact same goal of having the chromosomes, but it's adapted perfectly to suit the completely different life cycles of plants and animals. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I just want you to consider this for a second. Looking at the vast, obvious physical differences between a hopping, water-dwelling frog and a tall, rooted, flowering mustard plant, isn't it absolutely incredible that their very survival as a species relies on the exact same microscopic cellular ballet? It just goes to show that while life on the macro level is wonderfully diverse, the foundational architecture of life is universally precise, structured, and deeply interconnected. What other invisible systems are running in the background of the nature we see every single day? Think about that next time you see a flower bloom or a frog leap. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.